Hello everyone, Pastor Andrew here with another video devotion on the attributes of God. We're talking about God's will this week and next week. And the last video I put up was on God's will of decree versus God's will of command, or God's secret will versus God's revealed will. In essence, the idea is that God, as a sovereign God, is his will of decree. His plan in the world is never thwarted, not one bit, by anything that happens, good or bad. Yet at the same time, that does not then mean that he approves of all things that happen. He has a will of command, which is very regularly violated, but in those violations, they do not then pull the rug out from underneath what God is trying to accomplish in the world. It's a very great mystery. We can only begin to try to understand. But today I want to push that forward into an area that is very regularly seems to be one of the places where God's perfect will is indeed thwarted, and that is in the area of government and world events and politics, etc. It was 2015 during the night or the day before, a couple days before the election of Donald Trump as president. I was asked to speak at a prayer rally regarding the election. And if you can recall back, it was fully expected that Hillary Clinton would be the winner. And there was a great divide, even among Christians, as to who people thought should be the elected candidate, or not candidate, the elected president. So I was asked to speak, and I began by saying that I could biblically tell everyone there who would be elected president the next day. And the answer to that was that whoever it was that Jesus, in his sovereignty, saw fit to install as president would be the winner. I believe that with absolute biblical certainty, and I want you to see that as well. The book of Daniel is an example of this. Daniel was a prophet during one of the darkest periods in Israel's history. They had been taken captive by the Babylonians, which was a juggernaut of an empire and fully opposed to the faith of Israel and the God of Israel. And as Daniel was in that empire, he began to receive visions from God of events that were about to transpire. And he, at one point, in interpreting the dreams of the then King Nebuchadnezzar, says, "Blessed be the name of God forever and ever, to whom belong wisdom and might." He says this: "He changes times and seasons. He removes kings and sets up kings, and gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding." The book of Daniel then goes on to play that out in various ways. Daniel will have visions as the book moves forward, and he will see the next few hundred years of world history unfold before him. He'll see the rise and fall of Babylon. He'll see the rise and fall of the Medes and the Persians, who take the place of the Babylonians, and then the Greeks, who take the place of the Medes and the Persians, and then the Romans, who take the place of the Greeks. He'll see in great detail the rise of Alexander the Great as Greece, as the king of Greece, and how he sweeps across the entire world and creates the first almost global empire. And so all of this leading up to the time of Christ is what Daniel is able to see. All of it, in fact, leading up to Christ, in fact, ushering in Christ in many respects. And so while these world empires are opposed, deliberately opposed to the works of God, they are at the same time contributing to God's plan of redemption. And the same thing unfolds throughout all of world history. God establishes and dethrones kings according to his purposes. Good kings and bad kings, good presidents and bad presidents, all the same. They are there because God put them there. It's incredibly important that we believe this, that we understand this as Christians. Things are not off the rails because of this person or that person who gets in political office in this country or that country. Things are humming along according to God's designs. That doesn't mean that we take a back seat to the political process, that we sit by idly and don't care what happens. We engage because this is a calling that God gives us, especially in the country in which we live. It doesn't mean we don't speak out against it at times. But the manner in which we do this, it does have incredible implications upon. Romans 13, for instance, would tell us to submit to our governing authorities, and there is a time when we actually do not submit, that we do in fact stand against our governing authorities, and we may take another opportunity in the future to talk about that. But for now, I want us to see specifically what Peter says about this, because I think it's incredibly poignant what Peter says and the context in which Peter says it. 1 Peter chapter 2, verses 13 and following, Peter writes, "Be subject for the Lord's sake to every human institution, whether it be to the emperor as supreme, or to governors as sent by him to punish those who do evil and to praise those who do good. For this is the will of God, that by doing good you should put to silence the ignorance of foolish people." Peter is saying that we are to submit to our governing authorities, and that doing so is an honor to God, who in fact established them there in the first place, whether that governing authority is Donald Trump, or whether it is Barack Obama, or whether it is Nero himself, who was in fact the emperor whenever Peter was writing this. This emperor, Nero, would be responsible for the persecution and death of thousands of Christians, including Peter himself and the Apostle Paul, by means of execution. And it is this emperor that Peter will go on in verse 17 to say, honor the emperor. That doesn't mean that we roll over, doesn't mean that we do not have actions that are meant to push against perhaps injustices that are taking place. But it does mean that regardless of what is happening, and regardless of whether we agree with it or disagree with it, our responsibility as Christians is to pay respect, honor, pray for those that God has established, regardless of the type of man, woman that person is. That we respect them for the office that they hold, whether or not we respect the man or woman in that position. The office itself deserves our honor. This is the only Christian response in such a case. And it can only happen if, in the first place, we are people who believe that they are in that place because there is a sovereign king over them in the first place. His name is Jesus. He reigns supreme over all creation, and only that which is according to his will of decree, his secret will, is that which will take place. God bless and have a good night.